Welcome, fellow patrons and adventurers, to another installment of Deep Cuts. Here we're talking about Zero Escape 999. 9 hours, 9 doors, 9 persons, 9 hours, 9 people, 9 watches, 9 nines, ice 9. A lot of nines. Numerology I don't know. I was really never really big into that. And so when they kept talking about the nonary games, I actually learned a lot about how much the number 9 factored into all of this, It was pretty impressive, actually, pretty well thought out. I actually did play this game, and I forgot that I played this game years ago on the DS. I remember when I picked up, gosh, what game was it? I think it was like Hotel Room 512, because it looked interesting, and somebody at the counter was recommending this, and it's like, oh, if you like this, then you should try 999. I was like, okay, I'll try that. And I remember playing it and I think getting one of the bad endings because I never consulted a guide at the time, at least not for a puzzle game. I didn't think that there were multiple endings. And it wasn't until most recently that this game was actually being remastered and put out for PlayStation 4 that I actually was starting to look at it and go, lo and behold, this was actually a patron request. So I thought it was really cool that, hey, here I am, I get the chance now to play this game and go through and actually get the true ending. I actually haven't gotten the true ending before, and so while I have played this game twice before, I didn't get the true ending only because I wasn't aware of how to pursue it, and there was, time goes on, don't have time, never really got to it. I have to say, this game holds up pretty well, but it's really easy to say that for a puzzle game. Puzzle games, I think, don't age because the actual meat of the game is the puzzle itself. If the quality of the puzzle is good and it still makes you think years from now, especially if you forgot the solution like I have, then it's a good game. The sprite designs and the art style, that one still holds up because most of it's just animated stills. The characters really have little to no animation. They're mostly just, like most visual novels, just standing there and just their mouths move. The time aspect of it, the part where it got all sci-fi towards the end, that part actually kind of surprised me because I thought this game would play it very straight-faced. Kind of like, say, Danganronpa. A lot of people after I did Danganronpa suggested that I play Zero Escape. I did play Zero Escape, but one of the things I didn't already compare it to is Danganronpa is immediately sort of alternate history, kind of sci-fi-ish. It's a bit more of an extreme of society. It's a satire, I guess you could say. This is a lot more grounded. The people are more grounded, their backstories are more grounded, the solutions are very grounded. There's a lot of logic. They don't want you to think of crazy outward solutions or outlandish ways of solving these things. Instead, it's meant to be a very grounded, very believable sort of tale that could happen. And then they went with time travel in the end, which kind of threw all of that out the window. I have to say though that even though they went sci-fi with the time travel part, it's still within a threshold of, I guess you could say, plausibility, because they were testing, the psychic powers, and who's to say that you can't psychically tap into yourself, because they didn't reference the Titanic authors. They did a good job trying to back up everything with real-world stuff. That's one thing that I like. I like it when they're grounding a lot of their sci-fi in reality. Actual case examples. I love when they put all the logical paradoxes out there. I loved it when they put all the stuff that's like, alright, well, all this stuff happened, like these writers with the Titanic books, and these people in these 2 different experiment rooms, and the picture identification. How much of it can really happen before you stop calling it a coincidence and start saying it's a pattern? I really enjoyed that. That part really, to me, was the more fascinating part. I don't want to call it lore, but I have to say the background science behind all of this was really fascinating. One thing I find if I could improve this game in any one way is one of the endings I got early on was the ending where Clover went killer and axe murder, and she just had a mental breakdown and started killing everybody. I actually found that much more fascinating because here we are as the main character observing somebody slowly, quickly degrade from the very beginning. Like right now when she has this hostage situation, she starts seeing how immediately effective things were, and she's a veteran, so she knows how stressful it can be. But even with her veteran status, even with all the nonsense happening right now, she breaks down, and breaks down hard, and she takes everybody down with her. More so than having Ace be like the secret villain that backstabs everybody because he's a secret villain anyway. He was going to backstab everyone anyway. That part wasn't as much as a leap of surprise or a change of character so much as Clover turning from the optimistic person, the person who was all about hope and working together and communicating, to the person who now is just out to just murder everybody. Seeing that sort of change of character I found was very fascinating, and I kind of wish that strength of writing was in more of the endings. Some of the endings, like the coffin ending or the submarine ending, I remember just being so forgettable. One of the first things I had to decide when I was first starting this video was, how am I going to approach this? This is a game that has multiple endings. Yes, there is one true ending, but all the endings are technically plausible. Some are pretty darn interesting, like I said, the Clover Axe murder ending, and you know, this requires multiple playthroughs, and I'll be honest, I appreciate everybody's patience, and I do it because I really like you guys, but man, I do not like playing games more than once in succession. That's just me as how I game in real life. If I ever play a game and I love it, it's gonna be years before I play it a second time. Playing a game back to back, I have only ever done if I'm trying to do something for completion purposes. In which case I'll go through, quickly play it through for a cleanup, but I went through engineering my playthroughs specifically for completion. And that's not what this was. This was a playthrough done as quick as possible just so I can get it done for a video's sake. And so I was rushing through a lot of it. You know, I had a guide, of course, open, just consulting all the puzzle solutions, just quickly going through all of it, because I remember, you know, back in the day, you have time to think about all these things. I have to say, though, the writing in this, man, I'm impressed with however long they must have taken to translate this. I heard it was a long time, and with this much dialogue, I can believe it. There are relatively few mistakes, honestly. I'm genuinely impressed with all these like visual novel type style games where the sheer amount of writing that goes into it. It really is a book. It really is a visual novel, duh. I just really enjoyed the way that they developed each character. I like how when you go into each room in different playthroughs, yes, it is possible to have a failed ending before you even begin, which is supposed to happen. And you get to learn more about each of the characters the more you spend time with them. The deeper you go in this game, the more they reveal around their backstory. And I found that so fascinating. I think it's also cool how they introduce the fact that you, the player, by virtue of being the fourth wall, do know by observing these elements how to remember things and how to carry over information onto different playthroughs. I like how they incorporated that into the actual story. I love how they put that into where Junpei is the Esper and he has the ability to remember across multiple timelines. That was so clever. I just wish that there was some way that, I don't know, I felt that the writing was stronger in some characters than others. Because if you went through one of the playthroughs and just by sheer accident, and it's possible, got the, you know, one of the real endings, or closer to the real endings, a lot of characters, a lot of information we divulged probably would have seemed quite foreign to you. Junpei is very much the everyman. I have to say, I still kind of have a hard time believing that he's this mysterious Esper, that just because he had a friendship crush bond with a little girl back when he was a little boy, that's the reason why he has to be the one. I don't know, I just feel that the Zero could have done something else. One thing I actually have to say I wasn't the biggest fan of in this game is the soundtrack. Not to really this is a game that I played mostly silent. I found that a lot of the hearing the tone that they use for the dialogue as it cascades through just the beeps and the blips, that got old real fast because you hear it so often. And I'm a big audio guy in the terms of I like having a robust soundtrack of a lot of different tracks, and this game does do that. Every single room and every single puzzle has its own unique theme to it. The problem is I don't think any of the sound quality or any of the tracks composed were memorable, and they all kind of sounded alike after a while. And I don't know, some of them just felt noisy to me. I remember the very first track, I think, when you're just getting out of your room. I did not like the blaring beats that would happen in the middle of the suspenseful drone in the background. I did not like the blaring of it. I'm not trying to hate on this game. I just felt that this did not have any memorable tracks to it. I have yet to actually play the remaster, and I heard that the remaster isn't as good in terms of the way that they handle the animation or they handle the puzzles, which I find interesting because, hey, this is a DS game. I wonder how you're going to take a game that was meant to be dual screen and turn it into a single screen game, but I suppose that's time for another time. That's something, that reminds me. The June going into a fever, and, you know, her getting more feverish the closer you are to a bad ending. I actually didn't figure that out until the second playthrough, that that's what was happening. When I was first going through, I just kind of ignored it because I was going through for speed purposes. But the second time through, when I noticed it happening at key events, I noticed it. It's like, oh, she does conveniently get a fever whenever you start entering a path that's diverging from the true ending, or has the potential to be. I like the small details they put in. The writing team really did a good job. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not super enthusiastic about getting the next one. I kind of do want to hit the Zero Escape trilogy, but at the same time I kind of don't, because the next game has over, I think, like 24 endings. It's a lot. Yes, there is a true ending where you can go through a specific way and go through, but man, that's gonna take just as long as any RPG. This game is not long on its own. It certainly didn't take 9 hours to play through a single playthrough of the game, but I can say that it did because it requires multiple playthroughs. Those are the thoughts on it. And any game that requires multiple playthroughs, you kind of already not lost the point in my book. I like games that have like a new game plus to it, and this is kind of like a new game plus. But man, it's just it almost felt like a chore in some rooms, because when you have to do some of the early puzzles again, even though you know the puzzle, there's no fun in it, so it's a chore. And sometimes when you go through different routes to get different endings, even the non-canon endings or the side endings, you have to redo everything. I kind of wish there was a smarter way where you already solved this room before, you can just skip it and go to the next cinematic. I would have liked if they did that, but whatever. I have to agree. Ace was completely played like a fool from the beginning. This whole thing was about him, and I like how he picked this up and just couldn't do anything about it, because everything, just like he admits later, everything he tried doing was already preempted and done. Or at least in this playthrough it was. I loved how he's like, isn't it awfully convenient how everything is just awfully convenient? And it's like, yeah, it's at first I would be like, yeah, it's terrible game design. Then I realized, no, that's the entire game design. That was the design of the entire game. The nonary game, that is, not the game. So I think that was very clever. I don't know if that was good writing saving gameplay, or just good gameplay writing blending into writing. But I like that. I thought that was cool. This is a puzzle game, so there's really not too much to talk about. It's all pretty logical, flows through. Would I recommend this game? Yes. I'm surprised to see how popular this game was. I thought it was a rather niche title, but then it turns out that a lot of people were not only anticipating this, but encouraging it. And hey, I'm always down for people trying new things and going into other puzzle games, but one thing I would say is that I kind of would have preferred if they really played up the, even though it wasn't the intent, if they really played up the murder mystery side of things. Like if there really was a real risk of death at every turn. Because mostly it seemed that once you got past the door, and you got past the easy deactivate your bomb thing, then none of the puzzles were really like death puzzles. It didn't seem like a death game. It just seemed like a death non-participatory game. Yes, you could strand people if you didn't calculate things, but like they all figured out later, the game was designed to where you could, if everyone worked together, get through just fine. They had a lot of setup with Santa, and they had a lot of setup with Lotus, but getting ready and being the realistic people, and like, oh look, down the line we're gonna have to betray somebody. Even though those cynics were proved wrong, and ironically saved, that's a realistic reaction. I was kind of thinking the same thing when I first played through. And I was thinking, oh crap, who am I gonna save? It's like, alright, I'm gonna save the pretty ladies, that's it. But at the same time, you have to work with everybody. But I would have preferred if some of the puzzles they solved in the actual rooms were deadly puzzles themselves. Almost as if the stakes constantly get higher, and the more they move forward, the more they know that they're getting closer to the end, but they know that it's getting more deadly. Like the furnace puzzle at the very end, that was like a high stakes thing. That was a death game puzzle. But none of the other puzzles before them really kind of were. They were just kind of inconvenient puzzles. Like, oh crap, one of us is trapped in a cage and we have to get the other person out if we want to get past this room. Yes, you are working against a timer. And I guess that was the prevalent point, is the fact that you have a 9-hour timer. But at the same time, I think you could have added even another layer of that if you really added where, hey, you're in a locked room puzzle and like it's filling up with gas, or hey, you're putting a locked room puzzle and you have a timer within that room already. Like you have an hour to get out alive. That's why this whole thing is timed, is so you are structured to get out within an hour. I kind of would have preferred that. Or maybe even the real world element, though this would have been tough to implement on a DS, actually having a timer in the corner where like it countdowns, and it's like your bomb is set to go off in an hour if you do not escape that room in an hour. But whatever, those guys did a better job of thinking this through than me, so that's just me being selfish. Anyway, this was a good game. I recommend it. If you don't play it, I can't say that you're missing anything. This game didn't really push the envelope very much, but it really did go in like a really well done way of blending a death game grounded in reality. A lot of them are very outlandish, almost silly really, but this one did a good job of making things grounded in reality, with excellent writing, strong puzzle solving, and a good purpose for replaying, even if the game itself isn't super great for replaying. Anyway, play this game, I recommend it. As always, thank you so much for joining me for this adventure and this behind-the-scenes insight on this recapitation. I always appreciate your support. As always, thank you so much for being a patron of the show. I may not be the most insightful person on this, but this is my way of speaking out to you, and I hope that you can take it into consideration when you speak back to me. So as always, appreciate your help, and I'll see you on the next battlefield. Thank you for watching.